Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a fascinating and honestly, a deeply complex paradox. We're looking at the dual reality of the current AI landscape. Because on one hand, we are witnessing these mind-bending, truly historic technological leaps happening right in front of us. But on the other hand, right alongside all that magic, we're seeing brutal corporate realignments. So today, we're following the money and the data. We're going to map out exactly how the massive promise of AI is essentially being funded by the price of human capital.
I want you to hear the staggering timeline from Jack Clark. He's the co-founder of Anthropic, the company behind the Claude AI. In a recent Oxford lecture, he put it incredibly bluntly. He said that by 2028, there's a greater than 60% chance that we will have an AI system capable of recursive self-improvement. Just let that sink in for a second. Literally, an AI you can ask to build a better version of itself. This isn't some distant sci-fi movie anymore. This is the official timeline coming from one of the most advanced AI labs on the planet.
And if you're wondering if we're actually approaching that level of intelligence, check out what happened just this past May. For 80 years, the greatest human mathematicians have been stumped by the Erdős unit distance conjecture. It's a problem from 1946, essentially asking how to arrange dots on a grid with absolute maximum efficiency. For decades, everyone just assumed the answer would look like simple square grids, while an internal OpenAI model just completely turned that upside down.
The AI didn't just take a wild guess, no. It autonomously generated a 125-page mathematical proof, no step-by-step human hand-holding required. It connected basic shapes to incredibly complex number theories entirely on its own. And here's the crazy part. It wasn't even trained for this specific puzzle. Fields medalists are calling this a historic milestone, right? Because it marks the exact moment AI transitioned from just regurgitating information to autonomously producing brand new, high-level scientific knowledge.
Now, it's not just abstract math either. This autonomous intelligence is bleeding into the tools you and I use every single day. Take Google's Gemini. It's actively absorbing professional creative platforms, integrating directly with Adobe, Canva, and CapCut. You can generate an image, edit it on separate Canva layers, trim a mobile video all from one single chat window. The AI isn't just generating content anymore. It's becoming this autonomous hub that natively operates software on your behalf. These massive capabilities are suddenly everywhere.
Okay, but here is where we hit the paradox. We hear a ton from tech executives about this augmentation-first future. That's the vision of a world where AI is a personal superintelligence, making us all infinitely more productive. Think of Mark Zuckerberg taking a business call on a jet ski using Meta smart glasses, right? That's the augmentation narrative. But when we dig into the sources, they show a sharply diverging reality beneath the surface. What we actually have is an automation-first model. Here, AI is primarily a cost-reducing mechanism, designed specifically to substitute human labor and optimize corporate operating margins.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this concept of AI cost displacement. When you look at the massive tech layoffs recently, companies aren't necessarily firing people because AI is doing their jobs perfectly yet. They're cutting jobs because building the AI infrastructure is staggeringly expensive. Meta alone is pouring up to $145 billion into AI infrastructure. Compute power has basically won the budget battle over human capital. Corporations are literally cannibalizing their existing labor budgets just to buy the silicon required to build the future.
And this dynamic brilliantly illustrates how the math of the balance sheet is funding the magic of the technology. Meta laid off 8,000 people to help offset that massive infrastructure spent. Amazon cut 30,000 roles while pivoting hard toward warehouse AI. Oracle slashed upwards of 25,000 jobs to fund their cloud AI buildouts. Intuit cut 3,000 jobs and explicitly stated they're reallocating those headcount dollars toward AI agents. The capital realignment we're seeing, it's swift and it's severe.
And the way this transition is happening internally is, frankly, killing. Follow this timeline from Meta's Model Capability Initiative. In April, tracking software was installed on employee tools, things like VS Code and Gmail, to monitor exactly how their smartest engineers work. By April 30th, leaked audio captured Zuckerberg defending that tracking to train their AI models. Then, on May 19th, 7,000 workers were completely reassigned to AI model training. And the very next day, 8,000 employees were fired via 4 a.m. emails. The brutal irony here is that these knowledge workers were actively and unknowingly generating the exact data needed to train their own replacements.
Now, while those direct AI layoffs still represent a relatively small slice of total job cuts right now, the forward-looking data is what we really need to pay attention to. 37% of corporate leaders surveyed actually plan to replace staff with AI by the end of 2026. So what we're seeing currently is more like a silent hiring freeze. Companies aren't necessarily doing mass firings every single day, but they have drastically reduced hiring for entry-level roles, fully anticipating that AI will soon take over those tasks.
And here is the real demographic twist, the thing that makes this automation wave completely different from the past. Generative AI scales with cognitive complexity. Jobs paying under $35,000 a year, they score a 3.4 out of 10 for AI exposure. But roles paying over $100,000, they score a massive 6.7. The highest paid, highly educated white-collar roles, the writers, programmers, data analysts, they are at the absolute greatest risk. If you work at a keyboard, well, this exposure score is talking about you.
But let's anchor all of this in some macroeconomic reality for a second. Nobel laureate Darren Acemoglu has run the mathematical models on AI integration, and he calculates that generative AI's actual annual productivity growth rate over the next decade will be shockingly low. We're talking just 0.05%. Now, why so low when the tech is clearly so advanced? Well, it's because those super optimistic forecasts assume that if an AI can write a routine email quickly, it can just as easily learn complex, context-heavy human tasks. But the data shows it actually struggles to master those hard-to-learn tasks profitably.
This brings us to what economists call so-so technologies. When corporations deploy AI to automate tasks where it fails to actually deliver massive productivity gains, it simply acts as a cost-shifting mechanism. They deploy it in high-wage roles to reduce labor costs, they extract the surplus for the capital owners, and often they end up degrading the actual service quality for the consumer. It suppresses wages rather than creating that booming, hyper-productive economy we are so often promised.
Moving into the next part of our explainer section, Security and Governance Cracks. Subtitle: Moving Fast and Breaking Infrastructure. As these corporations race to completely reshape their workforces, immense, unmanaged vulnerabilities are opening up. Our standard security tooling is just completely unprepared for AI-era speeds. Case in point, in May, a threat actor group pushed a poisoned extension, just a simple add-on tool, to the Visual Studio coding marketplace. It was live for exactly 18 minutes before someone caught it and removed it. But in that tiny, 18-minute window, it silently executed a command that harvested developer credentials from absolutely anyone who installed it. 18 minutes. That was literally all it took for devastating consequences. That brief window allowed the attackers to exfiltrate roughly 3,800 internal GitHub repositories. And it didn't stop there. OpenAI and Mistral AI were also compromised. It was actually so severe that OpenAI had to publicly revoke its macOS app code signing certificate, forcing users to reinstall a freshly signed build. The reality is, these attacks are bypassing traditional security perimeters entirely. Now, this rising threat level brings us to the policy response, or, honestly, the lack thereof. There was a planned White House AI executive order that would have established a voluntary 90-day pre-launch review framework for frontier AI models. It even included NSA involvement in classified testing, and it was designed largely because advanced models had recently discovered zero-day vulnerabilities, critical security flaws that were completely unknown to the software creators themselves, at massive scale. But astonishingly, this executive order was canceled just hours before the signing ceremony, with invitations already sent out. That cancellation perfectly illustrates the two deeply competing viewpoints we're seeing in the source material. On one side, you have national security professionals aiming to protect critical infrastructure from the exact types of vulnerabilities we just discussed. On the other side, you have the administration and corporate leaders arguing that any regulation, even voluntary reviews, would seriously hinder development and threaten the global lead, particularly against international competitors like China. So what ultimately tipped the scales? Direct access. The sources confirm that Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and former AI czar David Sacks completely bypassed standard policy processes. They called the president directly the night before the signing to warn that the review framework would slow AI development down. And the outcome? The informal access of tech CEOs who, by the way, have vast investments in AI infrastructure, outweighed months of interagency security work.
When we pull back and look at the big picture, we see this relentless reallocation cycle. Hundreds of billions are being poured into compute power. To fund all that silicon, high-wage cognitive labor is being tracked, quantified, and eventually displaced. This fuels awe-inspiring, world-changing technological leaps. But because of the immense financial stakes and the sheer speed of development, our security and policy frameworks are completely failing to keep pace. Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to take away from all this data. The capabilities of AI are expanding at an explosive rate. It's solving 80-year-old math problems, it's seamlessly operating our software.
But the price of that progress is currently being paid by the human workforce. So the ultimate question we have to wrestle with as we navigate this wild intelligence explosion is this. Are we truly building a personal superintelligence to augment our lives, or are we just funding and training our own replacements? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the data, and I'll catch you next time.